Hello students, welcome to TCOM 408 Online. You've made it to video number 8. I'm Dr. Mike Gerhard from the Department of Telecommunications. Yes, we have experienced some interesting times the last few months. The great American shutdown of 2020, the coronavirus pandemic. But this week, much of America is slowly starting to reopen, to get back to work, to come alive. Although I would still advise you to enter most businesses and social activities at your own risk. Now, if you think about it, COVID-19 has presented a huge ethical dilemma. An ethical dilemma not only for each and every citizen, but also for our public health officials, our leaders, our political leaders. What's going on right now is that there's two competing obligations that are in conflict. First is the public health concerns, our safety, controlling the virus and containing the virus, and coming up with a vaccine for the virus. Okay? The other huge obligation is the economy, the job situation, and the hurt that's happening to millions of Americans right now. So we've got these two competing concerns of public health versus these economic considerations. So what's happening right now is that the public officials, the political leaders, are trying to find the proper balance between these obligations, or what Aristotle would call the golden mean. And it will be so interesting to see how these obligations and concerns are balanced as we go forward now with the reopening, the gradual reopening of America. But I think we do want to avoid the extremes. I don't think we should stay shut down for a long period of time out of fear. Okay, but on the other hand, I don't think we should make the jobs and the economy the only consideration. It's finding the balance, I think. All right, in this video, we want to talk about the truth and why it's important, the truth, and how it's being threatened today, the truth. But let's continue to talk about the COVID crisis of 2020. The coronavirus crisis. You know, there's just been a flood of information out there, and some of it is not very good. It's misleading, it's propaganda, there's a lot of lies, conspiracy, hoax theories. And I think right now it takes a special amount of news literacy and critical thinking skills. It's so important right now to distinguish fact from fiction relating to the virus. In fact, it may be necessary to your health and safety. It could be a matter of life and death if we get good, honest, factual information. But there's a bunch of misleading information about the virus that's leaking out there, especially in the social media and on the social media networks. And I don't know if you know this, but lies spread a lot faster than the truth. Fiction spreads quickly on the internet and in the social media. And really, I would admonish you, don't let any misleading, sensationalized, false information fool you, deceive you. Be a media, news literate consumer. All it takes is a few critical questions. Here's 6 simple questions you can ask when encountering a news story or a post with information about the virus. First, who's saying it? Consider the source. Do I trust them? Okay, some sources are more credible than others. What proof do they have? What evidence to support the claims? Okay? How about, when was this published? Sometimes stuff is not current, but people think it is. It's just resurrected stuff from the past. Where else is this information being reported? What are other reliable and credible sources saying about this information or story? Okay? Is it being validated by other sources? Fifth, you might ask, why are they saying it? Is there some obvious motive or bias? And a sixth important question you might ask is, do I really believe this? Or do I just want to believe it? I think it's always wise to ask these kinds of critical questions. And remember, caveat lector, that old Latin phrase. Always let the reader beware. I would ignore most of the conspiracy theories out there. Okay? And maybe a lot of the rhetoric from our political leaders. You know, the president seems to have an aversion sometimes to telling the truth. He's been documented telling thousands and thousands of false and misleading claims. Sadly, some people say right now we sort of live in a post-truth world. A post-truth world. What might that be? That's the current political culture, where sometimes the debate gets framed by appeals to emotions and feelings. And this is often disconnected from reality or the actual details of policy or the situation. Okay? And it's kind of running around thinking we know what the truth is because we feel it. Stephen Colbert called this truthiness. Okay? But this is kind of a dangerous way to operate, based largely on feelings and emotion. That's why more than ever we need something called fact-checking. Fact-checking, an important journalistic function. But you should do it as well. This is the process of checking to make sure all the facts in any writing or advertisement or news article speech, to make sure the facts are correct. This is an important part of the watchdog function of journalism, to do this fact-checking. Now, a lot of famous things have been said about the truth, and I happen to love and agree with all of these quotes from the Bible. Know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. What about these admonishments that we got from our parents when we were little children to tell the truth, or that honesty is the best policy? Okay? Truth and honesty is so important, but there is a lot of deception and dishonesty in the world and in the world of mass communication. But truth is so important. In fact, it's a fundamental cultural norm. Okay? It's one of the oldest and most fundamental ethical principles. Honesty, truth. It's so important in terms of our ability to trust people, to respect people, in terms of our credibility, in terms of our personal autonomy, and it's essential for democracy itself. Think about it. Without truth, there's very little trust. Okay, a commitment to truth builds trust between individuals and between individuals and society's institutions. And this is very important right now. The big institutions like the media and the politicians, the government, they have very low levels of public trust. Respect. Telling the truth is really a form of respect. Commitment to truth demonstrates respect for people, and that they're ends in and of themselves, not just some tool to be manipulated or a means to an end. Telling the truth is a form of respect. Truth is related to credibility. A lack of truth undermines our credibility or our believability. Okay? And again, we want our journalists and our political leaders to have credibility. Autonomy. That's your ability to control your own life and to fulfill your own dream and your own destiny. Okay, a lack of truth undermines your ability to have that autonomy and to make informed decisions about yourself and the course of your life. And a final reason we should value truth is because it's essential to a democracy, to a free and democratic society, self-governance. How can we do that unless we have a maximum amount of truth and information? Now, truth is very valued in a democratic society. A lot of us love what's called the Miltonian ideal, or the marketplace of ideas concept. This comes from the famous British philosopher John Milton, who wrote about the importance of the free and open marketplace of ideas. You know, he was one of the first people to really come out against censorship. He hated censorship because he said it makes it impossible to get to the truth. Okay, he wanted the free and open search for the truth, or what we call a free and open marketplace of ideas. You might know of the marketplace of ideas as the battlefield of ideas concept. Put no censorship, put all the ideas out there, good, bad, right, wrong, stupid, smart. Let all the ideas compete for recognition in a free and open marketplace of ideas. This is how we get to the truth. Okay. Now, a lot of people have come up with new versions of the truth and have been persecuted, prosecuted for it. The marketplace of ideas is not a process that happens immediately. It might take decades or even centuries for the truth to emerge. Galileo, an early scientist, got in big trouble for challenging the truth about the nature of the universe and the solar system. His truth was different from the truth of the Pope and the Catholic Church. Same thing happened to Copernicus, okay? His ideas about science posed a challenge to the church and the truths of the church. What about Darwin and the theory of evolution and evolutionary biology? Certainly challenged the idea of creationism and the biblical truth about the origins of life. And people are still today even debating, creationism and evolution. So the truth emerges, but not always immediately. It might take a long time, but the only way it can emerge is through a free and open marketplace of ideas. I like this quote, "Truth is like a lion. You don't have to defend it. Let it loose, and it will defend itself." I think that John Milton would feel very comfortable with that quote. All right. Now, one of my favorite more modern philosophers, a media ethics expert named Louis Day, came up with this quote, which I just absolutely respect and believe in. Okay, so he said, "The commitment to truth is perhaps the most ancient and revered ethical principle of human civilization." Okay, truth, the most ancient and revered ethical principle. Of course, it's mentioned in the Bible, the 9th commandment, "Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor," or in other words, "Thou shalt not lie." But of course, dishonesty is part of human nature. We've all been dishonest at times in our lives. It's very hard to be perfectly honest as a human being. We live in a world of limited truth. There's all kinds of deception going on out there, and truth is very elusive, and it's often very hard to pin down. Okay. There is so much deception happening in the world today. Deception. Well, what is deception? Deception is when you communicate a message that you know is going to mislead somebody else, where you want to make people believe what you yourself do not actually believe. Okay? So this is misleading people, practicing deception. Now, there are all kinds of different types of deception that you'll encounter in the world and in the media and in politics, in every aspect of life. Okay, the most obvious form of deception is just the flat out lie, the falsehood, just making stuff up, giving up information that's false. That's the opposite or different from the truth, an outright falsehood or a lie. But other forms of deception are more subtle, okay? Quite often, you'll run into people who equivocate. Equivocation is a form of deception. That's just being real wishy-washy. On one hand this, but on the other hand that, and always being indirect or ambiguous or even making contradictory statements. Equivocation is a form of deception. Concealment is another important form and very common form of deception. You might think of this as cherry picking. You omit information that's important or relevant in a given context. Okay? Or you hide the relevant information, conceal it, but it's limited information that doesn't tell the whole truth. Other types of deception include exaggeration. This is when you embellish or puff things up, overstatements. You stretch the truth to a degree. Happens a lot in the world of advertising. Or understatement. This is where you play down certain things or minimize certain aspects of the truth, okay, to put a spin on the truth. Maybe you can think of some other forms of deception. There are certain other forms of deception that we can talk about: avoidance, gaslighting, false flag operations, catfishing, deep fakes. Some of these would make good topics for a presentation at TCOM 408. Avoidance, that's one way to get away from the truth. Filibuster, it's dilatory tactics, delay tactics, in an attempt to delay the truth from emerging. And a lot of people will just play the filibuster game. Another very interesting form of deception that we hear about today is this idea of gaslighting. Gaslighting is a psychological game. It's a very elaborate, insidious kind of technique of deception and psychological manipulation. Okay, you convince somebody else that they're crazy, or they don't have a handle on the truth, or they're wrong. Okay, and usually practiced by one deceiver or gaslighter on a single victim over an extended period of time. But some people will accuse even politicians and journalists of gaslighting the public. The false flag, you'll see this occasionally. This is a devious form of deception. This could be done in a political context or a military context, but some act is orchestrated in a way that appears to have been carried out by a party that is not in fact responsible. Maybe you set up something and make it look, and then blame your enemy and say that they did it, raise a false flag. Happens, especially in the world of politics. Catfishing. I'm sure you've all heard of that. I hope you haven't been a victim of it. But that's when somebody lures somebody else into a relationship by means of some fictional online persona. Yes, I guess you could build a TV series around it, but I would consider it to be a form of deception and basically a very unethical form of behavior. How about deep fakes? These are emerging in the digital world. You've probably heard of these. Deep fakes, these are videos or even audios in which the face, the voice of a person has been manipulated. They're based on artificial intelligence software, deep learning, and that's why they're so hard to detect. Sometimes they seem seamless. The altered video looks authentic, but it's not. And of course, this form of deception raises serious ethical questions. So there's a lot of information and examples about forms of deception in the world today. Okay, I think it all comes down to honesty. And think about the pledge that a witness would make in a courtroom to tell the truth, the whole truth, no concealments, no exaggerations, and nothing but the truth. Now, truth has really taken a beating in the age of social media, because the social media provide a platform for all kinds of spurious, dishonest, manipulative, inaccurate forms of information. Fake news spreads easily in social media. In fact, studies show that lies spread faster on social media than truth does. People are quicker to repeat and to forward and to share something that's wrong versus something that's actually true. So thanks to social media, some people think we're in a truth crisis. There is so much bad information on the internet. Now, the internet companies, this is an ethical dilemma. What role do they take in the censoring of fake news and blocking forms of content? That is they don't want the obligation. Okay, they want to leave it up to us, and so maybe it is up to us to ultimately determine the truthfulness of any information. It's our obligation maybe to vet what we post and share on the internet to make sure that it has credibility and truthfulness. And again, I've given you some questions that you could raise about any piece of information. A lot of fake news out there to be aware of. So it requires a lot of critical thinking skills and this basic approach to the news, caveat lector, let the reader beware. Now, everything probably falls on a continuum. Few things are absolute, whether it's falsehood or truth. Okay, most media messages probably fall somewhere on a scale or a continuum of truth. Now, it should be obvious, but news and information tend to get the highest ratings in terms of truthfulness, and news and journalism should get the highest ratings. It should be about the fearless pursuit of the truth. Although we know that a lot of people doubt the credibility and the honesty and the trustworthiness of news media today. And of course, we know that advertising and social media and entertainment tend to get lower ratings and evaluations in terms of the truthfulness. People expect advertising, I think, to have a certain level of deception, especially exaggeration. And social media has become a huge platform for disinformation. All right. And that's all I've got to talk about in this video about truth and the importance of truth in a free and democratic society. In the next video, we'll focus in on journalistic ethics and truth in the world of journalism and news and information. But until then, please continue to take care of yourself, to engage in ethical behavior, okay? And we'll watch right now as the world starts to reopen. I'll still be hiding under the bed for probably 2 or 3 more weeks. Anyway, take care, and we will see you again soon. So long.